Okay, we're live. So, good evening and welcome to the first episode of the Philosophy of Information, where we will try to see events of our time with I would say, more philosophical perspective. My name is Andre Meloche, and I would like to welcome our first guest, Dr. E. Michael Jones. Good evening, Michael Jones.
Good evening, Andre. Good to be here.
I am very happy to have you with me tonight. I apologize for the last time because we had a little bit of technical problem, especially it was a lot of feedback. But tonight it is better. I would just want to remind Canadian viewers, especially, that you are an eminent American writer with many publications like Baron Mittal, Libido Dominandi, Danger of Beauty, Logos Rising, and many other more books that are available on the Fidelity Press. You also have written many articles available on the website Cultural Wars, and you host a weekly podcast on the Cozy platform, also available on Telegram.
Yeah, the books are available at fidelitypress.org, and the magazine is available at culturewars.com.
Perfect. Thank you for this precision. Dr. Jones, I first encountered your article. It was on a French website, and your article were translated by Maria Poumier. And then after that, I started to read your article, and I read two books. I'm reading the Danger of Beauty actually now. First of all, it's a very beautiful book. I was very happy to have it. It's a beautiful object, and I would like to quote you. I think it is a nice dedicate that you wrote. You wrote, "This book is dedicated to my daughters who are as graceful as columns, to Ruth, my wife, whose beauty, inspiring contemplation, drew me back like a beacon at sea to the Catholic Church." You've been writing, Dr. Jones, since what, 50 years, something like that.
Well, I wrote my dissertation in 1978. I founded the magazine. It was called Fidelity at that point in 1971. No, I'm sorry, 1981. And I've been doing the magazine now, so it's 43 years now that I've been writing for the magazine.
That's a long journey, I would say, and it is very interesting.
Moses only had to wander for 40 years in the wilderness.
So you beat his record.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was a professor for a short time here in South Bend, Indiana, and I got fired 1 year after I arrived because I was against abortion. Fired from a Catholic college because I was against abortion. So my prayer at that point was, "Lord, why did you lead us out of Egypt only to perish in the wilderness?" But I'm still in the wilderness, still wandering.
You're still? Are you sure? Because my question is, did you ever lose faith?
No. Well, actually, no. There was a period of apostasy in my life, beginning around when I was around 19 years old. When I was in college, there was very confusing times. It was around 1967. The revolution was sweeping through this Jesuit college that I was there. And I now realize I think I became a Jew. I never thought of it this way before, but the priest who was my teacher introduced me to the art world in Philadelphia, and it was run by Jews. So I started working for a Jewish artist. I worked for two ladies who had an art gallery. They were both Jews. I ended up going to Temple University, where most of the professors were Jews, and I started thinking like a Jew. And that led me out of the church, and I came back to the church in 1973 when I arrived in Germany, Catholic region of Germany, a small town on the Rhine near the Dutch border called Race, and it was then that I came back to the faith. But once I came back to the faith, I never had any doubts about the faith after that. Once I put my hand on the plow, I did not look back.
It's interesting what you're saying, because I always try to imagine what is faith. How do we How do we keep our faith? So it's not that easy. Many people, as for myself, sometimes well, honestly, I doubt for many years. Now I think I'm on the right path, but maybe I'm not maybe as strong as you. The first book that I read of you was Baron Metal, and it was a shock for me. It was a shock, and you describe in this book the protestation movement named Occupied. I think everybody knows about it. It was in front of Wall Street in 2008. And in this chapter, you were interviewing a priest who was supporting the crowd. I would like to quote a part of Baron Metal. You wrote, when I spoke with Reverend Phelps about the lack of focus, he said that the job of the church was to support this, quote unquote, accompanied by a vague gesture aimed at the surrounding crowd. I pressed him on what this was, but he wouldn't get specific. He said that for the first centuries of the church existence, there was lots of controversy, but not one got excommunicated. He said that the people themselves will have to focus this movement and that it might take a long time. When I asked him if this was about capitalism, he refused to agree. He didn't know what capitalism meant. Some people say that it is this, and others say that it is that. It would obviously take centuries to come to definitive answer, something that is not in the cards without direction. When I remarked that power, quoting Lenin, was lying in the streets, he shrugged. I used to be a composition teacher, I told Reverend Phillips that you were saying. And we used to ask the student to focus their essay by coming up with a topic sentence. Sorry for the long quote. So if you come up with a slogan that encapsulated that protest was about, what would it be? Reverend Phelps pondered for a moment and then said it would be "We want." And that he took his leave, leaving me to ponder that meaning of his slogan. We want, but we want what? End quote. So it's been 16 years. According to you, what do we want today?
We want our country back. We want Logos. We are created for Logos. We want that to bring order to our lives. We want, if you're going to go specifically to that protest, Occupy Wall Street, I went there trying to, with all kinds of misconceptions. Fox News tried to demonize all these people. There's even a Batman movie, but if you can believe this, where they have called Batman and to beat up the people on Occupy Wall Street who look big and strong in the movie, but they were all young men who were sitting around that square, and they'd hold little cards, and you go up and you read the card, and it said, "I am $50,000 in debt, and all I can get is an unpaid internship." So this was a protest against usury, and we want a culture, a country that is freed from the burden of usury, because these people it's wrecking their lives. The other part of what they want is a stable life so that they can get married, and that is also being destroyed by the same group of people. So you have at the end times, the end of a culture. If you read the chapters on Florence in Baron Metal,
I did.
You'll know that the end of the regime, the Medici regime, was characterized by sodomy and usury, and that's the same thing that characterizes our culture at the end. The Florentine poet Dante Alighieri put sodomites and usurers in the same circle in hell, because the sodomite takes what is fertile, namely sex, and makes it sterile. And the usurer takes what is sterile, namely money, and makes it fertile through compound interest. So this is what these people were led to believe that they got an education and so on and so forth. They would get a job, and what they ended up with horrendous debt that they became enslaved to. And in addition to that, they also were handed a cell phone, which gave them pornography. And so they were enslaved doubly to this thing. And they were trying to protest their bondage. That's what that protest was about. And this guy, he's not a Catholic priest. Actually, he is a Catholic priest, but he left the Catholic Church and is now an Episcopalian priest. And the church there, it says, make Greenwich Village safe for homosexuals. I think he left because he's homosexual, because he takes place in gay pride marks. I hope I'm not misrepresenting him, but I think that's what I learned after doing a little research into this. So you've got people who should be leading, should be caring for these people, and they're asking for some type of bread, and all he's doing is giving them the stone like we want. It's like, what do you mean? It's you're a slave to your own passions, and you're exploiting the Roman collar, and it's a mess. It's just a total mess.
Is it common in the priesthood in the United States? Because when I was reading Baron Metal, like you mentioned, the end of time, it is corruption, destruction, no morale. So we see it now. Even it is even worse today. I don't know if it will change with the Trump administration. It looks like it, but I'm not that sure.
It will change. There will be generational change in the priesthood. And this generation, the sexual revolution is like a bomb crater in the middle of the historical progress of the Catholic Church in America. So you come up before the bomb crater, everything's pretty much normal. Then there's the bomb went off and it killed all those people. And then afterwards, it's starting to heal itself with a whole new generation of priests coming out of the seminaries now, who are aware of what happens, more or less, more so than I would say my generation was.
Is it possible, because we have to teach those young people, this new generation? When I read Baron Metal, it is a long text. It is 1,400 pages with the notes and everything. And for me, it was a struggle because not because of the language, maybe a little bit my lack of historical culture, but it was a high opening for me. So sometimes I tell myself, do young generation read enough? Do you think that the Western civilization will collapse? Do you think that it is possible to regain faith? Because I see, with artificial intelligence, the Neuralink chip of Elon Musk, the declaration of Klaus Schwab, we are on a very dangerous path for people.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Is it possible for, I would say, it's the American, the American empire, but can we save it? Or we have to let it?
No,
we
cannot.
Don't.
I don't want to save it. It's a wicked, St. Augustine said that all empires are wicked. They're all criminal conspiracies. The Republic can be virtuous. So my prayer is that we all have a peaceful transition back to the American Republic. The American empire is a curse on the entire human race. And the sooner it disappears, the happier we all will be. And right now, it may very well be disappearing. It may. I hope it doesn't disappear in a nuclear holocaust. We're about that close to the nuclear holocaust. I don't know whether you've been following the news, but the current Biden administration that was rejected by the American people for its wretched excess in everything. Is now determined to use this next 60 days to escalate the war. To present Donald Trump with a fait accompli that he will have to complete by going to war, all-out war with Russia. Now, fortunately, Donald Trump does not want to do this. And fortunately, Vladimir Putin, after he was attacked, that vicious attack that Biden authorized, or claimed to authorize, he's non-compos mentis. He's off in the Amazon rainforest, and he's reading something about handing missiles over to Zelensky. They fire 6 missiles, and the Russians shot down 5, and the one didn't do much damage. So that was good, but it shows the intention of these wicked warmongers who were in charge of the American empire. We are talking about Biden's minion. There are 457 Jews in the Biden administration, and they are controlling the war under Anthony Blinken. He's the man who is nominally in charge, at least. And if you allow Jews to be in charge of your foreign policy, you're going to get war. This is the lesson America had to learn the hard way. Or at least I hope America learned this lesson.
Do you see a shift? Because, for example, in Canada, we have Justin Trudeau. He's he's a liberal, but he's I would say progressist, or I will stay polite and diplomatic. But how will the Trump administration how will they save the game? Because it doesn't look well. Even if we know Biden is senile, he's not there, and he's controlled. So. But they're not winning on the battlefield, first of all, against Russia. So, and I follow the conflict since 2 years. There's one blogger, Andrei Martyanov, who is an American. He comes from Soviet Union. He's an ex-military in Soviet Union.
Yeah,
he's a strategist. And when we compare not only the army but the force that are at stake, all the Western world cannot compete at all. So if they have to understand what is happening now. I don't know. What about, there's a concept that you wrote in Libido Dominandi, the melting pot. We have a big crisis in immigration. You have a big crisis in immigration in United States. In Canada, it's the same thing. You are our, I would say, biggest neighbor. So when we say in Canada, when America sneeze, Canada catch a cold.
Yeah.
So
if you go in the other direction, you have an even bigger neighbor. It's called Russia.
Exactly. But how the concept of melting pot that you're describing in Libido Dominandi, the fact that people arrive, I think it was in the beginning of the 20th century, people arrive from Europe, East Europe, and they arrive in this concept where they go in the tunnel, and after that they become American. I think you described this very well about, I would say, the type of homogeneous society. How can we escape that? I think you use the expression often, category of the mind, white, Jews, Canadian. We have the problem. There's a lot of people here in Canada, they complain about immigration, and I have the feeling, yes, they say, okay, Canadian value, I agree with that, but is it...
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Exactly.
Canada is a schizophrenic country. It has two personalities. It was originally a French colony. There's an interesting video if you go to Fort Michilimackinac on the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. This guarded the Straits of Mackinac. It was a crucial choke point in the New World, in New France. And the video, this is an official video of the state of Michigan. The first frame is there is the voyageur, and there is the Indian maiden, and they're getting married by a Catholic priest. That's the beginning. That is Canada. That's Quebec. Okay. Next, what happens then is the wolf conquers Quebec. The last day of the year.
1759. Yes.
Last day of the year before the river freezes and everything. He climbs up the back way and defeats the French and takes Quebec. And now at this point, you have a new regime in Canada. And the video says now there's a new regime. The video says the English now bring in a Jew, and the Jew is in charge of the trading post, and he cheats the Indians. First thing he does is cheats the Indians, and then the Indians don't like it. They rebel. They're playing high lie or something. They kick the ball over the fence. They asked if they can get in, get the ball. They get in. They slaughter everyone, probably including the Jew. and they say, we are now going back to the King of France. We now have our allegiance to the King of France. You have two completely different, incompatible operating systems in Canada. You have French Catholicism and you have English Protestantism, and they do not work together. And what happened, the classic instance of this was when the the Presbyterians showed up in Nova Scotia, and they are going to bring Christianity to the natives. The natives are Micmac Indians who have all intermarried with the French. And so not only do the English, they won't speak Micmac, they won't speak French either. Okay, and they announced that they're all going to become Presbyterians. And the French say, no, we've been Catholic for 200 years. Everything's fine. Just leave us alone. No, you have to become, because you have to become English. You have to speak English. You have to become a Presbyterian, and you have to support capitalism. This is all what England believes. And when the French still refused, they put bounties on scalps. This is the way the English deal with this. And then when that didn't work, they shipped them all off to Louisiana and hoped that they would die in the fever swamps of Louisiana. They became the Cajuns, les Acadiens. This goes back to the fundamental founding issue of the English colony, which is it was founded by Puritans. Puritans are Judaizers. Puritans believe that they are the God's chosen people. Oliver Cromwell believed that he was Joshua because he read that in the Bible. And if you are Joshua and the Puritans are God's chosen people, what are the Indians? They are Amalek. And you have the right to exterminate them. This has been true all the way up to the present day of Israel. This is the operating system, the Jewish operating system. And it's the antithesis of French Catholicism, which believed in intermarriage. That's the fundamental issue. How do you bring these two systems together? Well, you can't. You can't.
So, okay, but that's interesting. I have because I'm a candidate for a federal party in Canada, and I'm French Canadian, and I see this I would say this big difference. We call this a distinction. Two distinctive people, like the Catholic in Quebec, which is practically dying today because we lost this faith with what you call in libido dominant, the sexual revolution. I suspected that for many years, but when I read your book, for me it was clear.
Yes,
the Protestant part of Canada, they are embedded in capitalism. I can see it. In Quebec, it is totally different. And as a national or federal candidate of a party, I would like to reunite those two people because they're separate with language, but also with religion. You say it is not possible? Because maybe it is not possible because I see a lot of, let's say, misunderstanding on both sides. It's
right. I think if an interesting book was Paul Blanchard's book, American Freedom and Catholic Power. And it came out in 1947, where the WASP elite in the country and the Jews had declared war on the Catholics. That was the triple melting pot, 3 ethnic groups in America based on 3 religions, Protestant, Catholic, Jew. The Protestants and the Jews united. They feared the Catholics because of fertility, differential fertility. And one of the really interesting things that Blanchard mentioned in this book was Quebec. Wait a minute, what's Quebec? Why are you worried about Quebec? What are they going to send an army down? No, they were worried because the Quebecois were having too many children. And my understanding is that the man who solved that problem for the WASP elite was Pierre Trudeau, who was a traitor to the French Catholic population of Quebec because he introduced abortion, which is always ethnic warfare. It's a form of ethnic warfare around the same time it was introduced in America. So both Quebec and the Catholic population in America were subjected to demographic warfare around the same time, beginning with the 1960s, the battle over contraception in America. America, just to make one more point, America was on its way to becoming a Catholic country, primarily because of demographics. And I've said before, my experience as a 14-year-old, I showed up at City Hall, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. There's a Catholic mayor on the platform, a Catholic governor, and a Catholic president of the United States of America. And that Catholic president was John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy.
And within 1 year, he was dead. He was assassinated by a combination of the CIA and the Israelis, who both wanted him dead.
So that changed the path of America, I suppose, because when you talk about Catholicism, it was the same thing in Quebec when Pierre Trudeau arrived in power. He was promoting abortion, progressivism, and here we have the Dr. Morgan Tyler who opened the first abortion clinic, and after that, I can guarantee you in Quebec now, it's I will have a question about that. It's shocking. We cannot talk about abortion at all. It's like a taboo. It is not possible.
This is England. What you're seeing now in England is if someone is standing near an abortion clinic, the police will come up to this person and say, "What are you thinking?" What am I thinking? It's none of your damn business what I'm thinking. He should have told. Are you thinking about abortion? Are you praying? What? This shows you the effect of guilt. This is the effect of guilt, the guilt over abortion that is driving England crazy, and it's driving the Anglosphere crazy in Canada, apparently as well.
It is, and it is interesting that you mentioned guilt, because it's part, I would say, it's part of Quebecers' culture. They are embedded in guilt. I started to read The Danger of Beauty, and you're referring to Nietzsche in the Bacchae of Euripide. And the fact that Pentheus, the king, is killed by the Bacchant, and you wrote about Woodstock. I can quote you. You wrote it was Agave, the mother of Pentheus, and you said Agave wakes up after Woodstock, after Altamont, after 20-some years of rock ritual and its various form of intoxication, after 20 years of militant political feminist bacchantism, complete with march in Washington to the sound of the vacuum suction curette and visions of her child dismembered and resembled by the abortionist to avoid septimicia and a malpractice suit. Dionysus has destroyed us, as Agave says, but there is no indication her sight has returned. You talked a lot about the overturn of the Roe versus Wade. This is where I discovered a part of your work, and there was a lot of debate. But they do not debate about the fact. They're emotional. Quebecers, they are very much emotional, and I would say it's not that easy, because as soon as you start to talk about those subjects, people, they turn around. We saw it with the pandemic. They're not Quebecers, like you mentioned, we're French Canadian. So we have this tendency of being very emotional instead of being rational, like I would say the English part of Canada. But do you think that we have recovered our sight now? Because I found just after the presidential election, there were many referendum on abortion in United States, and I found some documents about all the states that legislated for abortion, like Arizona. They included that in the Constitution. Colorado, they had a limit for the gestation of abortion. Maryland, they voted for to embed the abortion in the Constitution. Missouri, Montana, and some they hold the line. They like Nebraska, they voted against. So we saw it. My question would be, because the federal government or the Supreme Court overthrew the judgment, does the federal government transfer the power to the state to legislate?
Yes. Yes.
To avoid, I would say, a national shock.
There is no national consensus on abortion.
Exactly.
So they have to hand it over to the states. Now, okay, has agave woken up yet? Has the intoxication worn off?
That's my question.
Okay, look what happened in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is an important state because there's a very significant Catholic population in Pennsylvania. And I was there in the 60s in the Catholic high school in the suburbs of Philadelphia. There were all these Catholic girls' academies, all founded by nuns. They're all there around there. And I watched as the nuns became feminist and the girls became sexually active. It was the sexual revolution. I'm talking about 1967 is when I started noticing this. Okay, if they get sexually active, chances are they're going to get pregnant. If they get pregnant, they got to decide, am I going to have an abortion or am I going to carry the child? The women who had abortions and did not repent and did not come back to the Catholic Church and repent are burdened with guilt, which is intolerable unless you find other people who are burdened with it, and then you turn it into a political movement, and that's called feminism. And I'm saying what we learned after Roe versus Wade was overturned is abortion is a fundamental Jewish value. No one said that in 1973 when Bernard Nathanson, who was a Jew, was promoting it in New York State. It was science on that side, and it was the Catholic Church on the other. Now, what happened here? I said that it was going to be a referendum on abortion. All of those Catholic women who became Jews because they had abortions are now going to have to, they elected Josh Shapiro. He's a Jew. There aren't enough Jews in Pennsylvania to elect anyone to any office. But he got elected because of the Catholic women who had abortions. And so it's going to become a referendum now. The Trump candidacy. Trump, which way is Pennsylvania going? Because the Catholics always determine the election in a place like Pennsylvania. George Marlin said they determine it in every election in the United States, but certainly in Pennsylvania. So they backed away from the abyss. And there were enough Catholics who voted for Trump. It wasn't a clear, unambiguous choice. It was a clear rejection of the Democratic Party platform, which was based on abortion. It was fundamentally, if you don't vote for us, they will take your right to abort your child away from, and you will be consumed with guilt for what you did. So it changed. It changed, and the Catholics did they did regain their identity. They regained their political identity. And if I'm saying if it happened in Pennsylvania, why can't it happen in Quebec? It can happen. It can happen all over, wherever there are Catholics.
Do you think we would need a French Donald Trump? Because when you talk like this, and I know Quebec, I know the mentality of Quebecers. They are, like you said, they are lost, but they're full of guilt. And I can say, as Quebecers, I'm full of guilt still. I'm discovering this late in my life, and I'm starting to understand that why for 50 years I was going away, not only from the Catholic Church, but from faith, and I started to change 30 years ago, but the process was very, very long, very slow. I think I'm a stubborn man, so it doesn't help. But I would like to influence people. For example, toward your books, 80% of Quebecers, they are French Quebecers. They don't speak English, so
give them Maria Pomier's articles. Maria Pommier wrote to me and she said, I would like to put all these articles together as a book and publish it in France. And she says, I don't think there's any publisher in France who would publish this. Well, can we publish these articles in Quebec? I can print the books here. I can print the books. I can mail books. I can have French books printed here, and we can send them to Quebec. That's not hard to do.
There's a website in Quebec. It is Quebec Quebec V, Quebec Life, and they are pro-life. And this is where I found your first article. There, I think it was Maria Pumi who translated it, and they're very active. But there's not a lot of people who read this here. I would like to check if it is possible to translate them, because many people here in Quebec are lost. I will not talk for I would say the English part of Canada, because the English part of Canada, like you mentioned, they're more Protestant, and I see it because I have a lot of acquaintance with British Columbia people in Alberta. And they always, now the big political fight is about immigration and about economy. Of course, they always say, I believe in God and the Constitution of Canada. The first phrase is the law of God. But they talk about it, but do they really believe in it? And I honestly don't know.
Your situation is no different than the situation in Ireland or the situation in Germany. I just had a long conversation today. I speak fluent German. I had a long conversation with seminarian and some other people about how we could bring my thought into Germany at this point. What you're saying is that you were suffering from identity theft. The Catholic population throughout the world has suffered from identity theft ever since the Second Vatican Council. I'm not saying that they're heretical documents or anything like that. It was a campaign to deprive Catholics of their identity. That was a worldwide campaign that involved pornography, sexual liberation, but also ethnic cleansing, and in the United States, social engineering in Germany. And I tried to Ireland's the same way. Ireland's a Catholic country. It's an island, and their immigration is the big issue. And I said, take a step back here. Before you start firebombing buses, think about abortion. And I said, for every Irish baby you aborted, God sent a Muslim or an African to take their place. So think about that. Think about that. And then maybe with repentance, if you start thinking about that, maybe with repentance, we will come back to our identity, because God is still there. He hasn't moved. He's still there. He's the same God that was there when Quebecois were having 12 children. He's still there.
It is interesting what you're saying, because the demography has fallen a lot in the last 35 years. And now in Quebec, we have the same situation. I will not say problem, the same situation with immigration, mass immigration. And people, they say, oh, we will be replaced. I want to say, but we will always be replaced. Our children are replacing us. But now I see it is more, it was ideological, like you mentioned. This is where, when I read Libido Dominante, I started to understand really what happened with the sexual revolution and the arrival of Pierre Trudeau in 1967 when he was elected prime minister. So now his son is pursuing the same agenda with a more, I would say, radical ideology, especially with the sexual gender ideology, which is, I'm sorry, we are working on that now. It is child mutilation. Then
right.
Abortion is destruction of life. They do not want to admit that, and that's why they feel guilty. I'm 64 years old. My wife is 59. She's from Russia. She was born during Soviet Union time, and it was, I think, 2014. One morning, after 1 month, she said, "I don't have my periods." And I said, "Okay, we will go do a pregnancy test." And I was shocked, because I have a daughter. Today she's 38 years old. And during the day, we make jokes and everything. We go to the pharmacy, we take the pregnancy test, and at night we go to bed. And I start to think about abortion, everything. And I tell myself, why do I think like this? And all night, I was not struggling. I was sure that I would never abort. I would never ask my wife to abort a child. So, and in the morning, she took the test, and I was what, 54 at the time. That was 10 years ago. So I said, oh, maybe I'm a little bit late to be a father, but if it is the will of God, I will just accept it. The test was negative, but I understood one thing. Like you said, I think I was under a spell. And it's very hard to break it, especially when you have families and friends around you who always talk about what's it, materialism. Quebec is a
Right.
very, very, very materialistic society. And as soon as you start to ask yourself questions, you are, I would say, rejected from the flock. They do not accept, I would say, differences. So, and you mentioned that there was another question you talk about managing the guilt. And in Libido Dominante, you referred to, because I read a lot of those writers, Michel Foucault, eventually Marquis de Sade, Freud, Jung, and they always try to justify, I think you use the word rationalize, guilt.
Right.
How can we talk peacefully to people who are like that? Is it possible? I think about the woke culture. It is practically impossible to have a rational discussion with those people. I don't know how to approach them because they immediately accuse you of being a bigot or whatever, and it is quite difficult. How can we manage, would say, a more rational discussion with those people? It's not easy. You see it in the United States now. It is changing, but I don't know how to approach people like that. It's not that easy. So,
Well, sometimes you just say that sexual liberation is a form of control, and that immediately people understand it and they act on it. So I pulled up the supermarket on my bicycle, and some guy says to me, "You're E. Michael Jones, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I stopped watching porn because of you." Well, that's a step in the right direction, because I didn't have to convince that generation that they were slaves of their passions. They knew it. Because they were addicted to their cell phones, and they were addicted to pornography. And so simply saying it helped some people to break the spell. You broke the spell by saying it explicitly. How it happens, I mean, so we're dealing with you have to be specific here. You're dealing with different generations, different issues of involvement, different ways they've been involved. I like the situation in Germany, for example. Do they feel guilty about sex, or do they feel guilty about being Nazis? Or maybe they're really saying, when they say they feel guilt about anti-Semitism, is that they're talking about some other type of guilt. I think that's what happened to Germany. There was a deal that was cut sometime in the 1960s where if you say that you're guilty of the Holocaust, we'll allow you to have whatever kind of sex you want. But the real driver of the guilt is sex. It's not because your grandfather drove a train somewhere in Poland. That's not why you feel guilty. I think the critical moment came when Joseph Ratzinger became Pope. That was a moment of opportunity. He was a man for Germany, for the Catholic Church in Germany.
Okay, yes, I agree with you.
So his predecessor was Pope John Paul II. First thing that man did was go to Poland. He's in June of '79. He goes to Poland. He says Mass in front of 1 million people in what's officially an atheistic country. And suddenly everybody realized that if you're Polish, you're Catholic. He resurrected Catholic identity in Poland. single-handedly, and within 10 years he overthrew communism. Okay, now Ratzinger becomes Pope. He's a German. Okay, he goes to Munich. That's right. That's where you should have gone. They're your people. You have a responsibility to your own people. It's your first responsibility, as Pope John Paul II recognized when he went to Poland. So you go there to Munich, and you got 2 million people showing up for Mass. Okay, and then so what do? You give a speech in Regensburg about Muslims. Wrong speech. That's the wrong speech. What he should have done. Who am I? I'm going to tell the Pope what he should have done. He should have gone to Dachau. He should have gone to Dachau and he should have said, "Wo sind die Gaskammer?" Where are the gas chambers? And at that point, he would have broken the law. And then the German authorities can decide, do you want to arrest the Pope?
Oh.
Are we going to arrest the Pope? If we don't arrest the Pope, then he just broke our hate speech law. Volksverhetzung, the paragraph 130, Volksverhetzung. He would have broken that and then freed the country. That's what would have freed the Germans. Or if they had arrested him, it would have been even better. Put the Pope on trial. Qu'il mange, il pape, il meurt.
It is interesting what you're saying because it reminds me of a play from Albert Camus, Caligula. And in this play, Caligula tells his advisor, Scipion, he says, "Scipion, I want the moon." And Scipion tells him, "Imperator, you cannot have the moon. It is not possible." And Caligula answers, he says, "I'm the Imperator. If I cannot have the moon, who can?" So I would say, according to what you said with Pope Ratzinger, who could break the law if not the Pope? And defy, I would say, like you said, break the spell. It's
Right.
not everybody like.
Why did he not do that? Because he had internalized the commands of his oppressors. He was a victim of American social engineering. We are all victims of American social engineering, including me. I was a guinea pig in an experiment that no one ever told me about. We have to break out of this. We have to take away the manacles that the Americans has put on our minds.
Can we talk about religious colonialism? Because according, I will not follow the question. What would be interesting would be about Gaza, for example. Can we talk about colonialism, the settlers? Because there's a book that I read many years ago, and I read it recently again. Albert Memmi was a Tunisian mathematician, and he wrote a book. The book is The Colonized and the Colon and the relationship between them, and it fits perfectly with Quebec because Canada is a colony of Great Britain. So can we talk about religious colonialism?
Yes.
According to, because, and it is not only in Canada. I think about New Zealand. All they were all under this spell. Ireland.
We have two forms of colonialism. We have Catholic colonialism and we have Protestant colonialism. And I've talked to you already about Protestant colonialism. The Reformation created the national church. Before that, there was the universal church and different nations. It created the national church, which led directly to the Puritan church, which means the Judaized church, which means that the elect are the children of Moses. They are Joshua. They are under Joshua, and everyone else is Amalek. That is the essence of colonialism. Now, there are people like Noel Ignatieff, the professor who created critical race theory. He's a Marxist. He wrote a book called How the Irish Became White. He's following in the footsteps of Theodore W. Allen, who wrote a book called The Creation of the White Race. They are both trying to talk about colonialism when they don't understand religion. They are both Marxist and they don't understand the Reformation. They don't understand what the Reformation meant. And so they can't understand, like the Ulster colony. in Ireland was created 2 years around the same time as the Virginia colony in America.
Mm-hmm.
The Virginia colony had Irish and Scottish slaves until 1619, when the first Africans showed up, and then they became white. The essence of what we're talking about here is that if I am God's chosen people, they are Amalek, whether they are Irish in Ireland or whether they are Negroes or Indians in America. That is the fundamental dehumanization that is the basis of colonialism. And that was the battle of the, let's say, the 16th, 17th, 18th century. Who is going? Is it Catholics, Catholic Spain, Catholic France versus Protestant England? Who's going to win the battle here?
I think it is recently you said and I think you mentioned it with the national religion. And you said the national religion of United States is money or capitalism, if I quote you correctly. And you, because what struck me when you compared those two forms of colonialism, in Baron Mittel, you refer to Faust. And you say, like Faust, they got short-term gain at the price of eternal loss. Can United States get out of $40,000 billion of federal debt?
They have
because why I ask the question, it is because it is national religion money. How can we get out of that? For me, it's you cannot. The only thing I can see is devaluation, 70%.
Yes, you have to devalue. You have to basically what you have to declare bankruptcy. This is what one of my people I know who was a quant on Wall Street said that the genius of the American system is liberal bankruptcy laws.
Exactly.
That's how they get around that in Wall Street. And so, but it's not equal. And so if you're a student, you will never get out of your debt. Although the Biden administration has been forgiving student loan debt. But if you're Donald Trump, you're too big to fail, and he's declared bankruptcy 3 times. That's the way you clear the debt. That's the way you clear away the debt. It's called a haircut. The creditors will have to take a haircut, and that's what's going to happen with this debt. It's going to have to be written down. It's going to have to be basically thrown out. We have reached the point now where all of the income from taxes is paying off the interest on the national debt. We can't go on that way. Can't go on that way.
So, do you think the solution will be political? Because when I see this, I see the Trump administration arriving in power with this huge debt, and I see the people struggling in Canada, but in the United States it is horrible, and we send billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, but we know it doesn't go to Ukraine. It goes to the military complex, right, and in corruption in Ukraine. So, of course, the funding will end one day, but now it is they're proposing loan to Ukraine. How we will get out of that? Devaluation is one thing.
Yeah, their solution, they're betting, they're gambling, and their solution is, if we take over Russia, we have trillions of dollars of natural resources which we will be able to exploit, and it'll be worth the money we're spending on the military thing. It's not going to work. NATO cannot conquer Russia. And so the question is, what do? You have to have a fundamental reevaluation of what is the country? What is capitalism? Capitalism is state-sponsored usury. Okay, you have to eliminate usury from the economy because it will kill everything. That's the lesson of usury. It is reached that point now. How do you eliminate? You're going to have to default in some sense. You're going to have to write off those debts. Now, apparently, the other thing you're going to have to do is cut the size of government. And apparently they're open to that. Elon Musk is supposed to do that. Apparently, Mr. Malahi has caused solved a lot of the problems
in Argentina.
in Argentina simply by eliminating the government. The government is too big. It's too big. It has to go. It has to be eliminated. I think that there are ways of doing this. Okay. But you have to have the will, and you can't have the people in power who are benefiting from a corrupt system, because they will destroy, they are destroying our country right now. We cannot tolerate this level of debt. We cannot tolerate it. We shouldn't be the government shouldn't be borrowing money. The government should be creating money.
Well, that's like you said. I think, and you mentioned it in Baron Metal. It's a very good scheme, because you lend money with nothing, fiat money. It is nothing. The leverage is so huge now. I used to work as a business trader for the electrical company in Quebec, and it was not possible to see the type of leverage they had. I have another question for you about Russia. You mentioned in Baron Metal, and I was very interested in that chapter, because during the perestroika, which was the word means restructuration, you referred to the fact that George Soros was buying telephone or communication company in Russia during the perestroika with the kind help of Jeffrey Sachs at the time. Alexander Dugin is a Russian philosopher. He's always talking about Russia that would have to reconnect to the roots of Christianity to win, not only to win the war or the economic war, but their faith. He said they will not win. Even if they win politically, they will not win if they don't reconnect with their faith. How do you would see that? Do you agree with Dugin? Could we apply the same thing here? Can we reconnect with? Of
course we can. We can do it tomorrow. We can do it right now. First and foremost, we have to regain our identity as Catholics, which means we should think like Catholics. And I'm saying that Pope Benedict thought like an American. He was a victim of social engineering. I'm saying, first thing we have to realize, we are all victims of social engineering. And we have to wake up and regain our Catholic identity, because that will allow us to talk to people all over the world. This is the fundamental basis of a human being. Is a logos. It's rationality, and it is the ability to speak. What did Putin just say? He said, basically, I can talk to Donald Trump. This is what we have to regain. Anthony Blinken cannot talk to anybody. Anthony Blinken can only say, I have relatives who died in the Holocaust. And if you don't immediately roll over and play dead and do whatever he wants, he doesn't know what to say. And so he sends missiles in. This is classic Jewish anti-logos. They don't know how to talk. They get violent as soon as you disagree with them, because they cannot talk. We have to regain our Catholic identity, which means we have the ability to talk to people all over the world. And through this talking, we can bring about peace, because we have a different operating system.
It's interesting you're talking about this, and you referred, when you were referring to the 60s, about the opposition between science and religion, and I felt for it too. Do you think, because I have the feeling that when we are rational, we can decide to believe in God. It is not irrational to say that I believe in God. So do you think it is possible to have a discussion with people who will accuse you of being irrational because you believe in something that is not, I would say, proven? They use always the same expression, proven scientifically. Since the pandemic, we saw what happened with the pseudo-vaccine and how they were trying to convince people that they were having doubts about, I would say, the injection. Immediately, they were ostracized, marginalized, fired. So they were categorizing people as completely irrational people. I think now it is changing, but do you think it will take time? Because we still The American society, the Canadian society, or the Western world is wounded now. We will have to maybe, first of all, we have to wake up, like you said, and
Scientism took a really big hit with COVID. Do you know anybody who regrets not getting the shot? I don't know
no,
any.
no
I
one.
I know people who regret getting the shot, and so when they say science is real, we just say, well, that's not science. Now, science was always a truncated form of logos, and it got turned into an ideology at the time of the Enlightenment. And what we now know, I wrote Logos Rising after my experience of going to Iran with there's a group of people who are Muslims. You know, it's the official, but they have a kind of dual identity because they were conquered by the Arabs, and they never relinquished their language, and so they always retained a kind of identity. So I dealt with this in the second chapter of Logos Rising with the four atheists. Atheism is a psychological problem. It's clear. You can read the book. You take someone like Christopher Hitchens. Interesting story. Why is he an atheist? He's an atheist because he dumped his pregnant wife and ran off with this Jewish lady who made him famous. Famous as a man who attacked God because God is an exalted father. And so if you really want to find out the basis of the irrationality behind atheism, get into the history of the fathers. Now, I've talked about this all over the world. And I've talked about when I just did a podcast with some Indians where I had to be frank with them. And I'm saying, what's the problem with India, he says. And I said, your problem with India is you've got 33 million gods. That's irrational. You can't, if you have two gods, you have one too many. You have to have one God because that's rational. And the existence of God is an article of reason. It's not of faith. And these conversations, I'm engaged in conversations like this all over the world now, either helping you to regain your Catholic identity or explaining why your culture never developed because of the Logos never penetrated there, because the Catholic Church never penetrated there. This is a discussion in Africa, in India, in Iran. I'm having this discussion all over the world. This is the time for this discussion. And I think we're making progress. And I think the fact that we're facing nuclear holocaust right now is a sign that those people cannot talk anymore. It's the American empire was powerful when it projected some type of image of itself as rational and helpful and believing in freedom and democracy. Well, we don't believe in that anymore. It's all just pure force right now. And so they're losing the discussion. Now it's time for us to take up this discussion and show the world that there's a better way, there's a peaceful way. And as soon as the empire gets over, maybe we'll break through in 60 days. Maybe Trump will be able to end the war in the Ukraine. Maybe it's just over the horizon. And maybe this is the lesson that we have to learn now, that it is possible. And maybe the dialogue is going to begin now. Maybe now is the best time to start talking.
Well, I think it's optimistic. I agree with you. And when the Berlin Wall collapsed, nobody would have expected it would fall so fast. So maybe you're right. Maybe we just have to be optimistic. Dr. Jones, I have a final question for you. You're writing another book. What will be the subject of it?
American identity.
So you will be able to influence people in the Trump administration. I
think that the election of Trump was a reaffirmation of an American identity, that there is such a thing as an American. We're not really clear what we believe, but as opposed to the Democrats proposing identity politics, which is basically in order to be a good person, you have to be part of this special interest group, like a homosexual or a Negro or whatever. You know what I mean? This is the defeat of identity politics and the resurrection of an American identity. And it has to be clarified at this point.
I'm very happy that you say this. We've passed 1 hour. I would still have a lot of questions, but maybe we will end it. We will end it now. I can re-invite you one time later on when you will have finished your book. You have any final word for Canadian? Because I hope with this conversation that we had tonight that they will discover you and they will read you, because they are, first of all, your book are incredible. They are very well documented, and I would say ask Canadian to read your book. So what could you tell them?
Yeah, let's begin. Let's circulate Maria Pomier's article. They're in French. The people of Quebec can read these in French. And I'm saying we were all fooled. We were all tricked. We were all victims of identity theft. We all bought a story of freedom that was really slavery. And it's now time to wake up. It's never too late to wake up and to get to the real heart of the matter, reassert our identity, and bring about a better world because we know who we are.
Good. So, Dr. Jones, thank you. It was a pleasure to have you, and we didn't have technical problems, so I'm very
Thank
happy.
you. Yeah.
So, see you next time.
Thank you. Great
Bye-bye.
conversation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. So thank you.